Hey everyone, this is Natalia from Autism Elements. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about things that are happening towards the end of the year. One of the biggest things is that there are so many celebrations happening, and one of them is awards ceremonies. So I have created a resource that is going to help you guys set the tone and prepare your students for success. So I'm going to start first talking about why this is so important. So as we all know, if you work with any students with disabilities, we need to sometimes prep them for many reasons. We want to give them the expectations, we want to teach them what they're supposed to do, just so when they go to these overwhelming events, they know how to navigate those waters, right? But another thing that I learned is that sometimes giving visual supports, it just gives guidance. It helps minimize anxiety. It helps give them a direction. So I wanted to show you one of the resources that I've created. So here is one of them, and I'm just going to quickly show you guys. This is the actual social story. So what I did with the social story is you actually read it with your students and with your class, and it goes through the expectations. What are they, what happens in an award ceremony? What are the different types of awards that we get? And also understanding that everyone is going to get an award, and what to do if your name gets called while you're waiting and things like that. But it doesn't quite stop there. So when I tell everybody is you want to start always with providing a social story. But I have a set that helps you navigate not only of teaching the concept, but then going to the next level and actually manipulating the concept that you have taught. So this is an adapted book. And if you notice, is exactly like the social story, but the difference is that now they get to navigate and manipulate the actual story. So that means that as you're going along with it, one way that you could do it is you read this story and the students have this version. So as you're going through the pages, the student can actually, again, practice with it, have movement with it. And then, of course, you come to the day of the event, right? So when you are at the event, you're going to need some guidance. And this is where the task analysis visual icon strip comes really handy. I have used this with students because I love that Velcro sound, right? Where we can pull the icons, and instead of showing them the entire process, you do it one step at a time. So this task strip is really created for when they're actually at the ceremony. It goes through sitting on the assigned spot, waiting for your name to be called. When your name is called, you're going to walk up the stage, you're going to grab your award. Then when you get your award, you're going to walk off the stage, and then you go back to the assigned sitting area. So you can use this version. It depends really on the type of student and what their needs are. So that's another thing that I love is that my visual supports have been created to be differentiated and to meet the different varying levels of your students. And then I have different formats. So I'm going to show you a couple. So some students really like kind of, and I do too actually, going through the different steps. So you can have this version where they don't do anything with it other than just point to it and just kind of guide themselves, or you can have one where they actually check it off. Because the more they practice that, again, they're going to become more routine and know what to do in this type of event. Then you also have a different model. So it's kind of the same concept, but just in different formats. And the difference between these is that these have the actual written explanation, while these are just the actual visual supports, no written words or any explanation. Okay. And then the last one, which is one of my favorite ones, is like this is like your magic card, right? So this is the one that you're going to use when you are maybe putting in a land yard and have it ready so you could remind those students. And what I like about it, it has both. It not only has the visual but the written, and I call these the pocket checklist, because you can have it with you and just a reminder, again, the expectations, what do they do, how do they, what is it that they have to do when they get that award, and kind of reminding them. And this really, I mean, as I always say, visual supports are key to help our students be successful. We have to practice, we have to model. Like I remember I would go before award ceremonies when the cafeteria was empty, normally right after breakfast, and I would actually have my students practice. I know it sounds crazy, but just like everything, the more you practice, the more things become a second nature and a routine. So we want to give this experience to the students. So when they get to the actual event, they have been drilled so much with the expectation of how to do the procedures, right? Or the getting the award, that they just have to concentrate in all the other things that are happening around the world in that cafeteria. Now, my school used to do it in cafeterias. Some schools have it in auditoriums, but I don't know about your meetings and your ceremonies, but they always feel chaotic. There are so many people, there's so much noise. Things don't always work out as we want them to. So if we can minimize not having to, have our students be exposed in a manner that they don't know what to do when they have to get an award, that is covered. They have mastered that skill. Now we can just focus on helping them navigate the overload of sensory, the overload of, here I am with all these weird people, these strangers. There's a lot of people invading personal space. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to give you today. And what I wanted to talk about is some tips and tricks that I have learned throughout the years of working in a self contained classroom and having to participate in any type of event, especially if it's in an auditorium or a cafeteria. Now, I'm going to review it, and I wanted to make sure I write it down because I didn't want to forget any of them. The first one is bringing a magic toolbox or a backpack. And in this backpack, you're going to have fidgets, prefer item, any engaging tools that can keep those students, engaged and remain calm in those situations where, again, you have to wait for a long period of time. It's unstructured. You don't have the same setup that you would in your classroom, right? So there's a lot of new things happening in there. And, as most of us know, sometimes they can be so lengthy. So having some tools and different tools that you can pull and like change them up is going to be a great tool. My best advice is always bring preferred items for students. Okay, so you can make sure that they're engaged and fully motivated to stay or remain in that area. The next one is to bring noise canceling headphones. I mean, I know that every time I walked into the cafeteria, the noise itself was so overwhelming. And that's just with our students there. Imagine when you have a large crowd of families, siblings, I mean, auntie, grandma, grandpa, who knows who's coming to visit, right? So having those headphones for the students who really suffer that sensory overload, that auditory overload, are going to be great. For me, they were lifesavers. Um, One other thing that I recommend, and this can go both ways, is that the class goes first. So sometimes I would talk to my administration or my grade level team that I was participating with in the award ceremony and ask them if I can have my class go first. Because especially the end of the year ones, if you're working with like maybe a fifth grade class or an eighth grade class or even the senior class who are, they're the end, sometimes it can be so overwhelming and they take a long time. Sometimes there's a lot of times where they have a lot of awards to give out and your students might become anxious. So maybe getting them to be the first one, making sure that they're participating, they're included, but also having the option of maybe you can step out, whether it's with your whole class, if you already got your awards, or, a few students. That way they don't miss out their turn. The same option could be is to have your class go last. I've done that before in the past when my administration said, listen, we can't have you go first. There's certain awards that must be given at the beginning. And then I asked them, okay, can my class come to the cafeteria? We reserve a whole area and my class can sit and somebody can maybe they're walking me, text me, call me to my class to say, hey, we're getting close. You're gonna need to be in the cafeteria. That has been done for me in the past and it has worked wonders. Now, every year has been a little different because every year you have a different group of students. But if you know that your class as a whole really has a hard time with these type of ceremonies and events, find ways to kind of, be near, be having a plan really and meeting with administration. My biggest thing is a lot of teachers have told me, well, I don't, I think they're going to tell me no. Here's the thing, the worst they can tell you is no, but make sure that when you come to have these requests, you have your reasons why. You explain why your students truly need these accommodations so they can be successful. Okay, so don't just say I just want to or because, but give them the actual explanation, right? That's going to be really key. The next thing is seating arrangements. So meet in advance with your administration and support staff or grade level team. I don't know who exactly sets up your ceremonies on your campus, but discuss where is your class sitting. I remember that when I first started in this world, they would sit my class in the middle of the cafeteria, right in the middle of two classes. And that was not working out for me for many reasons. So I would still sit with other classes, but I would ask them to have me sitting close to the end, close to an exit door, or maybe either towards the front, so it wouldn't create so much disruption, asking people to move out of the way, or towards the back, where again, it was accessible for any emergency that I needed to do. um you can always ask them, like I said, even though you bring all these different magic tools, but to me, having that preset seating arrangement and the location of where I was with my class was very much the key to making sure that things went smoothly as possible. The next one is staff preparedness. So you guys have to come up with support plans. By, especially if it's an end of the year ceremony, by now who your students are, what are their triggers, and who can handle or tolerate it a little bit more than others. So be prepared. I remember that I was very blessed to have two assistants, or if I didn't have two assistants, I would speak to my administration and my support staff and say, is there anybody that can come help out during this particular event? I'm going to need the extra hands for multiple reasons, whether it was because some kids got really overwhelmed, or just, felt extremely over sensory, overload, and we needed to have them step out and maybe take a sensory walk, do some sensory activities, and then come back. Or some of them had behaviors. We do have some students that have behavior plans. So they may be, pushing their limits and getting in a heightened state of emotion. So what are the plans for any possible situation that might come? The more you prepared, the better and more successful this event is going to be. Okay. And one of the things I used to do is I used to tell my assistant, Leah, she would be, overseeing this particular child who she had a great rapport with, and that was her duty. Then I had another student who was an eloper. I knew that I would sit with this kid and I will hold on to this kid. And we basically divided the task. But you have to have this plan in place prior to any ceremony, any event, so you guys know. Or what is your backup? What if somebody runs out? What is, like, make sure that you have tried to think of any possible scenario, and how is the staff and the adults going to respond to these scenarios? The more we prepare, the more successful. Keep remembering that. And then after the ceremony, the biggest things to me is it can be so overwhelming, it's unstructured, it's chaotic, there's sensory overload. Make sure that when you go back, give them a break to calm down, whether it's through the break area, through sensory input, through recess, or even a preferred educational movie, or, go noodle, anything to kind of get themselves back and then restructure them. I always used to come back to sending them to either their preferred centers, or I would do a whole group activity of something fun, whether it was crafting, painting, again, music, anything that would engage them and give them a break. No too crazy demand, because it was overwhelming to begin with. Your schedule's already been thrown off, so just make sure that you have fun that day, kind of wrap it all around, and make sure that you've prepared in different ways, but then give them a break to kind of rezone themselves, regroup themselves, whether it's the students or whether it's you. Okay, so hopefully this gave you some ideas. I know war ceremonies are happening, so hopefully it inspired you and motivated, and see you next time on the next video or podcast.